With the September to October roadmap being revealed, our beloved Billy is slated to receive some tweaks, which sadly will undoubtedly be some nerfs. Since his buff in January, he's rose in both pick rate and kill rate, seen here via these nightlight.gg stats. From a lovable, goofy killer known for awkward misses and their most incredibly dedicated players getting incredible clips, to an ever-present threat, capable of outplaying most tiles in the game and zoning survivors with little effort. Where these buffs definitely help for Billy's accessibility, making him a more appealing option to play, in my opinion they just slightly overstepped the mark and overbuffed him. Now who thought I'd be saying that a year ago, huh? Now there's a lot of opinions on this subject. Some people think Billy is completely fine, and other people feel like he needs a major rework, completely revamping him. But for me, I don't think there need to be big changes. There's three key elements which currently make Billy really strong. Let's run through them quickly. And first up, we've got Overdrive. This was just a complete shock, fully overhauling the outdated and really punishing overheat mechanic to be something positive in Overdrive. Incredible, honestly. But if we break this down into what it actually is, gaining an incredible speed boost, and I mean massive, this is faster than doubling Graven's, for just using your ability. And don't forget, you also get an increase to charge time with that. Very, very strong. Say if we put this into a realistic scenario, you down a survivor, you hook them, and there's a gen across the map that you need to stop. Using your chainsaw to traverse all the way over there's a good chance you're going to either get Overdrive or build up a hefty amount towards it, meaning the next chase with the survivor you find, it's probably going to be with Overdrive, so it's going to make it really hard for the survivor to deal with. And because of the readily availability of Overdrive, I feel like it needs to be toned down just a slight bit. Either make it more punishing the regression on it when you stop using your chainsaw for a while, or make it so it just takes a longer time to accumulate that heat to get Overdrive. But this doesn't need to be drastic. From a survivor perspective, the most fun way to play against the Billy is if they're going for curves, mind games, playing tiles in just engaging ways rather than forcing pallets. Some of those tiles you need Overdrive to play like that, and if you don't have it, the Billy's probably more inclined to force the tile or go for a back rev, which isn't as engaging. For me, what would be a really nice trade-off for Overdrive becoming a little less frequent would be something like Trickster. Trickster's got main event, and with main event you can choose when you use it. Whereas with Billy's Overdrive, you just get it and it goes, right? So if there's an activatable button, say you hit Overdrive and then it'll start ticking down, and within that time while it's ticking down you can press a button and activate it. That would be very nice. Not only would this allow you to choose to use it in the most effective situations, but it'll also avoid them awkward situations where it suddenly activates, it takes you into a tree, you bonk. It feels a little bit awkward. Especially for me, I love Drift Billy, and sometimes you just don't want Overdrive. You just go too fast and you can't make the corners anymore. And likewise as well, some people just want to learn Billy, and having different speeds that you need to adjust to at different occasions, it can be a little bit overwhelming, to be honest with you. There's some people I know who just don't enjoy Overdrive and they kind of struggle to engage with Billy because of it. Next up, we've got Billy's cooldowns. Now, on release, when Billy got buffed in January, it felt awful as a survivor. They would just completely miss you. They would get the easiest cooldown that would only be a matter of like a second or so, and then they'd be right back on you. Now, Behaviour have already made some steps towards fixing this. In one of the hot fixes, they increased all the cooldowns associated to missing. But I still feel like there's some slight space for some increased cooldown to be added. Now, bonk cooldown, when you bump off something, that's completely fine. It already feels punishing. That can be left as is. It's miss cooldown because sometimes a survivor completely outplays you by either dodging narrow or dodging wide when you're going for a curve. And because of the cooldown being so good still, you can just cancel saw and be right back on them before they make a pallet or window. Then moments where you'd be outplayed should feel like you're being outplayed, right? And for a more experienced Billy player, having this knowledge of the cooldown, you can deliberately miss a survivor to make them dodge away from a tile. And because of the short cooldown, you can catch up them quickly before they reach there and get a nice down. Again, like Overdrive, it's just slight number changes here. We don't want to make it feel punishing to traverse because some of the maps already have a lot of clutter everywhere, which means you have to cancel saw, restart, cancel. You know, we don't want an issue where that just feels unfun. And the last of the three major factors that make Billy really strong is his turn rate. Now, randomly, this wasn't in the original patch. They decided to do a hotfix with Billy that buffed him incredibly high. They changed his high sensitivity period from 0.75 seconds to 1, which I don't know if they knew how big a buff this was, but this made that you could basically curve any tile in the game. That is such a massive difference. Now, if you're not fully familiar with Billy, when you release your chainsaw, you have a very high sensitivity period where you can turn a lot. This basically allows you to curve, and in this window of time, you move at 412 degrees per second. And after this, the eventual turn rate is 32 degrees per second. And obviously, if you put this into practical terms, it means you can curve for longer, which means you can start your chainsaw earlier, which means the survivor gets less distance around the tile when you start curving, meaning in general, you net a way bigger distance on the survivor. Okay, firstly, let's go through some examples of curving, just so you understand how he was prior to his buffs. Okay, with Shaq, it's notorious a really strong tile for survivor, and curving it can be difficult, or at least used to be. There's two main ways you could go about curving this. You could either go up the corner and do a 90-degree curve, or you could peel a little bit wide and look a little bit further out and get like a whipped curve in, which would be nice for hitting the far end of Shaq. Now, if we compare that to current Billy, the difference is night and day. Firstly, we don't have engraving, so our charge time is far superior, meaning the slower movement while you're charging is way shorter. And secondly, Overdrive activates, meaning I travel further during the high sensitivity period. And thirdly, because of the new high sensitivity window, you're able to release the chainsaw much earlier and curve much later, netting way more distance on the survivor. Here's all three clips overlaid, and I want you to pay attention to these three things. Notice the charge time, the speed, but importantly, the point where I release the chainsaw. Okay, let's quickly run through another example of a very strong survivor tile, the cow tree. On this clip of Oh Billy, notice where I release it. It's the very edge of the wall, narrowly missing him. However, with current Billy, I can release so much earlier at the beginning of the wall and catch her before she's anywhere near the pallet. Okay, finally, let's go through an S-curve. You may not be conscious of this because it used to be a high-level trick. This is where you aggressively flick one way, then correct another direction, netting yourself a little bit more distance around the tile to catch the survivor. I mean, just look at Sofa Rex's reaction at this S-curve.
Cookie literally just S-curved him the...
Yeah, they really used to be a thing of beauty, but now with current turn rate, yeah, it's just way easier. Now look at this clip on Thalita. She opts to hide behind the hay bales knowing that she's caught out, but because I S-curve this, she's got nowhere to go. She's completely compromised and I get the down. Now if we compare this to old Billy, I go from S-curve and just narrowly miss the Zarina, sadly. If this was current Billy, that extra bit of turn rate, easy hit. This creates a very weird dynamic. For experienced Billy players that played them before the update, hitting these sort of curves that are very extreme, they can feel unsatisfying in an odd way, because you know without that turn rate buff, you would never ever be able to get that, and in reality, it would have actually been a bad curve beforehand. I don't have a socials command. If people want to find me, they can find me. Like, come on! That should never be a thing I can do. Curving Cowtree was some of dreams. You could do it, but you had to play it perfectly. But on the flip side of it, the sheer ridiculousness of what you can hit is quite satisfying, because it's just so wild. You can really go for some extreme stuff around some very strong tiles for Survivor. On the Survivor side, what makes this feel so punishing is the really good survivors that know their check spots, that play very patiently. It can feel like you play perfectly, you play correctly, but you just get outplayed because you can just curve so much, you know? It's very hard to play against a new Billy, and it's sad to say, but it feels like crouch teching becomes an integral part to outplay good Billy players when they're using this curve rate. And this is where it gets difficult. Should they revert it? Should they go back to 0.75 seconds instead of 1? As an experienced Billy player, and playing a lot before the change, I could probably get used to it again. It would feel very sluggish, and it would probably feel pretty bad, because the bad tiles that Billy struggled with before would become bad tiles once again. But where I've got to think about this is casual Billy players, the people that want to learn Billy, they want to enjoy him. Would it feel good? Probably not. It'd probably feel awful to play with the old turn rate, honestly. Especially the people that have learned Billy since. Going back, I don't know. I would love to hear your opinion on this. Should they revert it? Is he fine as is? Is the turn rate too strong? Because I feel like it's something that a lot of people maybe don't pick up on, and typically attribute it to something like Overdrive. Now, something that doesn't necessarily need buffed or nerfed, it just needs changes, is Billy's add-ons. There's some fun options in there, but there's a lot of boring ones too, sadly. We're going to start with quite a polarizing add-on. An add-on that before Billy's buff, People justified, people enjoyed, people said you need to run this every game to have a chance. The low pro chains. Now, they're very unique. Being able to break a pallet and continue sprinting. This adds a very high skill ceiling, especially for those billies that know how to low pro flick. Bouncing off a pallet and then doing a 180, 360 turn. Being able to line up with a survivor. That is so cool, and I would hate for that to be removed because the clips are just outrageously good. But now with buff Billy, it really feels like a survivor. You're in a lose-lose situation. If you greed the pallet, you're going to get curved and insta-downed unless the Billy makes a mistake. If you drop the pallet, they're just going to break it and get a free health state. You lose in that situation too. And good billies who chase you when you're full health will break the pallet, go ahead of you to zone you, cancel sword, deliberately not hitting you, and then get a free back rev, which feels just awful to play against, absolutely horrific. Now consider the miss cooldown that I already talked about, that will help nullify that last point of that. But also I'd like to see a compromise where low pro can still have that effect that it does of getting through pallets and continuous sprint. However, it can only injure. Unless, of course, you're an absolutely cracked billy like Lynn in this clip, and you can continue the sprint for over 5 seconds, netting yourself an insta-down because you deserve it. Otherwise, if you hit someone who's already injured, that's going to give them deep wound instead of downing them, and give them a speed boost because obviously they're not going down. I think that would be a good balance between it still being strong, a good utility for dictating the map and destroying pallets easily, while also not being as punishing for Survivor. I think one of Billy's add-ons greatest fallens was highlighted perfectly in this odds video. These 4 add-ons that aren't just bad, you know, brown add-ons or yellow add-ons, there's a purple in amongst these, are just completely useless. They aim to increase the time it takes for heat to dissipate or the speed at which heat dissipates, which is just so stupid when you think the way to build up heat is by using your chainsaw. So all you have to do to have the effect of these 4 add-ons is tap your chainsaw on. Just such an oversight. Hopefully these get changed because they're just terrible. And with the removal of these 4 add-ons, that's going to open up a massive spot for potential in his arsenal of add-ons. Now if we go off how current Billy is or off my recommended nerfs, he's still going to be a strong killer, so he doesn't need strong add-ons. Personally, I'd much prefer him to have fun options that maybe change the way your chainsaw work or your playstyle, just so you have more variety. Now ironically, if you look at some of the add-ons that I used to have, like Black Grease or Mother's Helpers, that required you to give up something like a blind or a stun to benefit you for faster charge time, the reward was a bit underwhelming for what you had to give for it. But now with Billy's strength, these add-ons could thrive. These could be decent. Another add-on that was absolutely laughably bad, the Big Buckle, which reduced your tear radius, but while you were in overheat, which was just... you couldn't use your chainsaw, or if you did, you'd have to have a really drift-orientated build set up for it to work. Something like this could be easily repurposed. Say, instead of an overheat, it's an overdrive, you know? Overdrive is pretty frequent. Having a smaller tear radius and overdrive gives survivors less time to react when they're on gens if you come for sniper attempts. That can be fun, but importantly, it does give you time to react because you'll be able to hear the chainsaw, right? So there's a fun dynamic there. You know, you could pair it with Monitor, the synergy, you know, that's the sort of stuff you want to promote with new add-ons. And one add-on that was absolutely heartbroken that was removed when Billy was buffed in January is the Leafy Mash. Now this add-on does promote slugging, which is not the most healthy gameplay, I've got to say. However, what it did was when you hit a survivor with chainsaw, you get 15 seconds of undetectable, and it just synergized amazingly, absolutely amazingly with the Apex Muffler. You could down a survivor and then sneak and silence over to another one, so if you have infectious or if you have some info perks, and net a free jump scare or another down that just wasn't anticipated by the survivor. Now these don't have to be as exact add-ons, but down this avenue of fun and incentivizing synergy is just the sort of gameplay I'd like from Billy. Now as an absolute bare minimum, I think we will see some add-on changes in this up and coming patch for Billy. So we'll have to see what behavior cook up. If you've got any suggestions for ideas for add-ons, feel free to leave them below. Now we'll just have to see. These changes are just around the corner. In less than 2 weeks as PTB will be coming out on the 17th of September. Let me know if you agree with my thoughts, because it's quite a polarizing subject. I want Billy to be fun, engaging and enjoyable, but also accessible for many players. And I feel like having that interesting chase element as Survivor is key to being enjoyable as a killer. But before then, hopefully I can get a gameplay video highlighting the fun that you can have with the Leafy Mash add-on. Particularly this one's with a TTV, so you can expect some jump scares, don't worry about it. I really hope they add that add-on back, but we'll have to see. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.